Hello and welcome to the Lightroom series. This is a tutorial on Lightroom Classic, which I use a lot as a photographer. And the plan is to go through all of the things that I use and more, so you can learn how to use Lightroom in a structured way. This time we're going to talk about the histogram, a little bit about what it is and more about how to use it. The histogram is on the right sidebar that you have here in Lightroom. Lightroom basically has a left sidebar, a right sidebar, and then the content in the middle. And the histogram is on your top right module there. So I have selected 4 images that I think are good to visualize the histogram and see how the histogram works. Image 3 here is a well balanced and well exposed photo. It's not a good photograph. Don't look at the what you're looking at. We just use it to see the histogram. And then we have photo 4, which is a bit on the low key side, where the histogram pushes away towards the left. And the same thing here with photo 2, where it's far to the left. It's very, very dark. That's what it means. And then you have a photograph with a very bright element, the sun. So you'll have a pretty balanced photograph, but then it spikes up towards the right. Now, I didn't want to talk a lot about the histogram, but just to talk a little bit about it anyways, because it's needed. The histogram is a visual representation on each and every pixel of your photograph. On your far right, you'll have your blacks, and then you'll have your shadows. And then 50% of the histogram in the middle is your midtones. And after the midtones, you'll have your highlights. And on your far right, you'll have your whites. Now the X scale here is a number between 0 and 255, which basically means that if it's 0, then there's no information whatsoever. It's dark, it's just black. And if it's 255 on your far left, it's bright white. Now in the digital world, you'll have RGB, which is red, green and blue. So you'll have 3 colors on each pixel, ranging from 0 to 255. And the combination of these 3 will give you one very specific color. Here you'll have the blues, and you can see that the blues are brighter than the rest, which is kind of obvious in this image. And then you have the red and the greens overlapping. The yellow here represents the green and the red overlapping, and the gray here represents all of the 3 colors are overlapping. And you'll have a little bit more information of how this photo was taken here. This one has nothing to do with the histogram. There's just information about the exposure. This is the histogram in the library section. You can't do anything here. You can't click or drag or anything. You can just look at the histogram while you're selecting a photo. However, if you move to the develop section, you'll see another histogram, which is here. So this histogram is exactly the same as the library one. Let me just resize it a little bit. However, when you hover here, you'll see that you get grayed areas. And this is the things that I was talking about earlier. You'll have your blacks, which you can see are saying blacks there. And then you'll have your shadows, your exposure or midtones. You'll have your highlights, and then you'll have your whites. So whatever you will do in the upcoming modules that I'm going to talk about, you'll probably see a change in this histogram. And as I said, it's just a representation of how bright the pixels are or how dark the pixels are, like how the exposure of this photograph is. And as I mentioned earlier, this photograph is pretty well balanced, so all of the pixels are between 0 and 255. However, if I'll choose this dark image here, you'll see that there are a lot of colors moving towards the 0 side, towards the blacks. So let's select a darker image, something where the histogram is moving towards the 0, where you have lots of pixels that are zeroed out, meaning that they are totally black, there's no information in them whatsoever, and there's nothing you can rescue. Even if you're shooting in RAW, there's nothing there. You'll see that there are two black boxes on your top left and on your top right. You can toggle these on using the keyboard shortcut J, and you'll see that something happens with this photograph. This means that the blue pixels, the blue colors that you see here in this photograph are the black pixels. The pixels that are zeroed out and have absolutely no information in them whatsoever. You can't do anything with these pixels, no matter how much you try. So this is just showing you where these dead pixels are, or like where these black pixels are. And you can click on this one as well to toggle it on and off. But as I said, the shortcut, the keyboard shortcut is J. So this is for this dark image. When I press J and these two are highlighted, you'll see that if you hover, it will say hide shadow or show shadow clipping. And this one will say show hide highlight clipping. And this is a very dark image, so it won't have any highlight clipping. But if we go to something that is as bright as this one, you'll see the red dots here. These are the white out pixels, the pixels that are 255 in value, totally white, and you can't do anything about this. You can't put down the exposure hoping to get information in these pixels. There's nothing there, it's just white. So let's say, for instance, that we want to make this photograph a little bit brighter. You can hover on your exposure or your midtones section, and you can just click and drag towards the left to like totally change the exposure of this photograph. You can also just select the shadows. If you want to lift the shadows a little bit, make them a little bit brighter, you can just pull it towards the right, and you see the shadowy parts of the photograph gets brighter. Now I'm gonna undo that just to show you that I can also take the midtones and make this photograph a bit darker. I'm just clicking and dragging towards the left, and you'll see that the midtones are, all of them are getting a bit darker. And as I mentioned before, wherever you are doing something in the upcoming sections, you will see that the histogram will be moving. So there are different ways of manipulating the image in the same matter. Okay, now just to show you guys a little bit about what you can do with this histogram if you're using a different tool, let's just quickly visit basic. And as I mentioned earlier, the gray part in the histogram is just a representation of where all the three colors meet. So let's say that we just take out the entire color information about this photograph. What do you think will happen? I'm guessing that you just thought that the entire histogram will be gray, and that would be correct. So let's just remove color information, and you see how the colors are just being desaturated and removed until everything is just gray. So the histogram is a very effective way of quickly looking at the exposure and the balance of your photograph. And you can also look at your histogram in your camera. There's another thing with the histogram that I would like to cover in this video, and that is proofing. Soft proofing is just a way to display how the image would look on a print. Basically, you choose the color profile of the printer and you can see how well the colors will be in that printer. You can activate proofing by using the keyboard shortcut S, or by selecting View and Soft Proofing, Show Proof. And you see that my histogram has changed to soft proofing. The histogram is still here. You can still do the same things. I can still drag the midtones or whatever section I like to do it with. But you'll have a bit more options here. So soft proofing is just a way for Lightroom to try to simulate how your photograph would look like on a print. So basically you will choose a profile, which is like a printer profile, and then you'll choose intent, perceptual or relative. I won't cover this as much in this series because it's about printing and not as much as how you use Lightroom to develop and create your photographs that you want to do. I just want to mention that you have soft proofing on this histogram section as well. And then you can also simulate paper and ink that will try to determine like the paper's true white and reproduce the colors that will be printed out. Just like you had the clipping warnings on the histogram, you'll have the gamut warnings on this soft proofing. You'll have your monitor gamut warning that will highlight the colors in this photograph that the monitor cannot display, and you'll have a device or destination gamut warning. This means that the printer won't be able to reproduce these colors that are represented in this photograph. They're out of scope for this specific printer, so they will just highlight them there. I think that's it for the histogram. Let's press S and go back to histogram. And as I mentioned earlier, whenever you will start doing stuff on the upcoming sections, the histogram will change. It's always a good idea to keep an eye on the histogram, and also when you're out taking photos, you can just see that your histogram looks good. It's like it isn't being clipped like this, which is very dark and very underexposed, or this one which has some clipped areas there that are overexposed. So yeah, hopefully you have a better understanding of the histogram, and also thoughts and suggestions are highly appreciated. And if you like this video, do give it a like. It will help others see it. And if you want to see more upcoming content about Lightroom and about me going out photographing, do subscribe, and I'll see you next time. All right, bye for now.